Hey guys, it's Lisa and welcome to my channel. Today we're going to make over some items and we're going to start with this little table. And I had painted it once before, but I don't know if you could see from here, but although I did clear coat it first, I got some bleed through on the legs, and it was kind of a pink bleed through because it was cherry to begin with. So actually a viewer of mine suggested a spray lacquer, and I might try that next time. But with this one I just decided to go ahead and paint it pink. So if I do get some bleed through, then it won't be an issue. And I had already sprayed this again with a clear coat when I got that comment. So I just decided go ahead and paint it pink. That way if it didn't work and I got that, then you wouldn't even notice it because it's already pink. So I don't think I was getting any more bleed through because I painted it and it's already been overnight, and I didn't get any, so I think this worked out. But I will try her suggestion because I do think that might work when I have something that I'm pretty sure will bleed. So I'm giving this 2 coats of the color Tea Rose. And before I taped off those little metal pieces on the end of the legs, the little feet. And this time I don't think I'm going to. I think I'm just going to paint it all solid. So, like I said, I give this 2 coats of the color Tea Rose, and that is a Dixie Belle color, and then I let that dry. So then after I let that dry, then I'm going to add some stencils on the top. So I had these stencils, and I'm not sure what the name of them are, and I'm going to try my best. I'm trying to get better about linking some of my products. So I'll try to find this one if I can and link it in the description. But I'm using the color buttercream here and stenciling this on only with 1 coat. I'm not going to try to get a really sharp image here, so just 1 coat, and I'm not putting a whole lot on my brush. So I'm going to put this in all 4 corners, and then I'll be adding another stencil to the center. And then I decided to add another trim stencil just around the edges between each of these stencils. And all of that is in buttercream. So once I get all of this on and let it dry, then I'm ready for my main stencil. And I chose this one because I kind of wanted to stage this with maybe a little tea set and a couple little child's chairs. That was my sister's idea, and I thought it was a cute idea. Now, if only I can locate the chairs, but I'm going to use both the color buttercream here and in black. So obviously for the buttercream, I'm using the buttercream chalk paint, but then I'm going to use my black ink, my black Stays On ink, to stencil the rest of it. And if you've watched me long, you know that I like to do that because it gives a more refined stencil, I guess. So I like to do that when I can. But you always have to make sure when you do that you add some extra ink to your ink pad because it does take a little more ink. And I always use little makeup brushes when I'm stenciling with the ink, and I'll try to link those also. They're great for stenciling with ink. I just remembered that I said lacquer a while ago. The viewer told me shellac. So shellac is what I'm going to use to help the bleed through from happening. And when I finish this here on top, I'm going to clear coat this as well. So I just spray a clear matte Rust-Oleum finish on it. You can use any clear coat you want. And then I'm adding white wax just to the detail. So only the legs and the little pedestal in the middle, and then right around those edges we'll get the white wax, because obviously the top has already been sealed, and I just want this white wax to settle down into that detail. So like I said, I'll just put that on all of the bottom part of it, and then just around the edge of the top. And now I think this will make a cute little side table, or like I said, it could be used for a little tea set. And then for the next item, I thrifted this little pitcher, and obviously it's too colorful for me, so I just give this a good cleaning. And instead of, a lot of times I'll use a slick stick, which is just something to help the paint stick on slick glass. But because I wanted, my first plan was to do some distressing on this, which I decided not to in the end. But had I done that distressing, I needed a dark coat to distress to. So instead of using a slick stick, I just took this outside and sprayed it with some brown spray paint. And then that would be a harder finish rather than just trying to paint with chalk paint brown underneath it. So, and then it helped it stick also. So because the spray paint will stick better to the glass than the chalk paint does until the chalk paint cures. So, like I said, I just did that to eliminate an extra step, but turns out I didn't do any distressing on this, so I could have just clear coated it instead. But now I'm giving it 2 coats of the color Tea Rose. And then I let that dry overnight before I did my white wax. That's why I decided not to distress on this, because I decided to use the white wax, and that white wax will bring out that detail that that the distressing would have brought out. I just wasn't sure after I thought about it that I wanted that brown to show through on this color. So, like I said, I decided to just do the white wax to bring out the detail. And then that was all that I did to this picture. And I think making this a solid color really updated it. And then the next item or items that I'm going to make over is a set of 3 candlesticks. And I didn't thrift this. I actually was cleaning out the storage room at my church, and they wanted to get rid of these. And so they were really heavy and really nice. I liked the detail in them. So I decided to just make them over. So instead of clear coating them, I used the brown paint on it. I just spray painted the brown paint on it. And then this one I do want the brown to show through. So I'm going to give these, I think I ended up having to give them, well, I gave them 2 coats of the buttercream, and that was plenty for all the areas with detail. But then I decided to go back and add, when I needed that third cut on this, that third coat on the slick part, I just decided to do a texture coat on that. So that just added more character to it, and then it covered well. Anytime you can get candlesticks or really anything with this much beautiful detail, it doesn't matter if it's dated. I feel like that red was really dated, but it doesn't matter, because if you paint any color of white on that, and but first give it a good base coat that you can distress to, it makes such a difference. And that the detail with the white and brown coming through is just, I think it's beautiful. So once I got these covered and let them dry well, then it was time to distress. And I possibly let them dry too well. That's very easy to do. And because I wanted to wet distress these. I didn't want to take a chance on sanding through that brown. So I just decided to wet distress them. But if you wait too long, like I did, you've got to really give it some elbow grease. So I wanted some pretty heavy distress on this, and if I was willing to work hard for it, it was happening. But because I didn't want to have to put that much into it, I just decided to lay my wet cloth on a portion of it at a time, and if you leave it sitting there maybe a minute or so, then it will soften your paint enough that you can distress a lot easier. So it was somewhat of a process, but it really did work well, and you can have so much more control when you're wet distressing than when you're trying to sand. And had I distressed these as soon as they were dry, then it would have been a lot easier. But I got plenty of distress from them, and like I said, just put that damp cloth on there a little while, and it does make it so much easier. On this one, I didn't leave it on long enough, but like I said, if you leave it on for about a minute, and make sure that your rag is plenty wet. You don't want it dripping, obviously, but you want to make sure that it's plenty wet. Then just lay it, and wherever you have it laying, it's so much easier. Now, once I got the distress that I wanted on these, like I said, because that slick part needed another coat, I just decided to go ahead and add some texture. So I'm using a Dixie Belle Sea Glass, or Sea Spray rather, and that's a texture medium that you can add to your paint, and it will add some texture. But you don't have to use that. You can use just regular baking soda and mix it up to half and half. But like I said, I had that sea glass, so I just decided to use that. And now I'm just kind of pouncing some texture just on that slick part. So I just pounced it on, and then once I get that done and let that dry well, it took maybe about an hour to dry well, then I'm just going to take a clear matte spray and just give these all a clear coat. Now, obviously, you can brush on a clear coat also, or you could even use a clear wax, but I just had the spray, and it was a pretty day here, so I just decided to take them outside and spray them. And I think that makes such a difference in these. And I think they'll go well with different types of decor, actually, but definitely farmhouse or cottage style, these will go well now. So now the last item that I'm going to be making over is a very large dresser box. And this I also got at my church. It's very heavy, and like I said, a large box, but I love all this detail. And because I needed a darker color to distress to on this one, I used that same brown spray paint. As you can see, I didn't do a good, I didn't make sure that it covered well. I just did one coat on it, and then let that dry well. I did let that dry overnight. And now I am painting 2 coats of the color buttercream on this one. And I didn't mention that on both of these, I'm really having to use a brush that I can kind of pounce down in there. And then this one, I'm using a furniture brush. But when you have all that texture, then you pretty much have to use a brush that you can kind of pounce your paint on, or that you don't mind getting messed up, because when you're pouncing with a regular brush, it will destroy your brush eventually. Now the inside of this was black, and I was good with just leaving the inside black, so I'm not going to try to paint that at all. I will paint the inside of this lid and the bottom, but that inside being black, I just thought it would work well, so I just left it the way it was. So this one took 2 coats as well. And again, I end up letting it dry a little too well, and try to just use a sanding block on this one, because I felt comfortable using a sanding block because I felt like it was a hard enough finish. But like I said, I let it dry too long, so I end up using a combination of the sanding block and in a wet cloth. And so that wet cloth softened it enough. I didn't leave the cloth on as long as I did with the candlesticks, since I was using the block. But once I started using and just kind of wet it with it, it worked really well. Maybe I could have done that on the candlesticks, I don't know, but it definitely would have went a lot quicker. But as you can see here, I just held that cloth on there and let it get just a little wet. I didn't have to wet it a whole lot. Then I got a lot better distress in a lot with a lot less effort, actually. And I just kept adding more and more distress until I liked the look that I got. And like I said, I ended up with quite a bit on this, and I really liked that heavy distress with all that detail. And I think this made the biggest difference in this box. I really think that candlesticks, it changed those up a lot, but I was really amazed at the difference in this box. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope to see you in the next. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great evening, and God bless you and your family.